Hi there. In this lecture we see Georgi Tringov against Bobby Fischer. Georgi Tringov, born in Plovdiv, Bulgaria, awarded the IM title in 1962, so that's 3 years prior to this game, and the GM title in 1963, so 2 years prior to this game. He was Bulgarian champion in 1963, 1981 and 1985. He's played on Bulgarian chess Olympiad teams during the 1956 to 82 period. So a very established Bulgarian grandmaster. We see e4 and Fischer plays the Sicilian defense. Georgi Tringov plays knight f3. We see d6, d4, c takes, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, the knight off. We see bishop g5, e6, and now f4. This is a very critical test of the knight off. We're going into the so-called poison pawn variation. The bishop has left c1 where it was protecting b2. This is a very, very sharp line. One expects Fischer to have done a lot of home research in this variation, and he does dare take the pawn. Queen takes b2. We see rook b1, queen a3, e5, d takes, f takes, e5, knight f d7. And now bishop c4 is played. Nowadays it seems the preference, and it seems only reaching equality, it's very, very theoretically analysed, is knight e4 in this position. This avoids some issues with the pin, bishop b4. And for example, h6, bishop h4, queen takes a2, rook d1, queen d5. This is a very trodden path nowadays, losing e5 on purpose and getting a position which is very scary, actually, I would say, for black and sometimes for white, to be down in such material terms. But generally, this is the starting point for many games. The starting point, yeah. Very, very theoretical territory, and it's thought to be about equal from here. But anyway, in this game we see bishop c4, which is thought inferior, actually, nowadays, the theoretical verdict out on this, because, well, there's this nasty pin, bishop b4, which is used, rook b3, queen a5, both sides castle, and now Tringov maybe has prepared this idea. If we think about the diagonals of death, which is one of my favourite kind of observations in chess, in the world of chess tactics, and it seems Fischer pushes every single observation I've made about tactics. For example, the trade-off between pawn structure, accepting isolated pawns or double pawns for piece activity, which can lead to tactics. Diagonal of death tactics, Fischer is like the supreme master. There's that diagonal, and there's potentially this diagonal. It seems white wants to open up this diagonal and mate the king on that diagonal with a battery with bishop and queen. And so his move is actually knight takes e6. It turns out this might not be a sound move, knight takes e6. It's nice to play in a flashy way, like Mikhail Tal, but one always has to be wary when studying the games of Tal, which might be a future course, that one doesn't become too unsound. There can't be defenses where you'll just material down and you're not mating the opponent. It's nice for it to be a bit clear cut. Now here, instead of knight takes e6, by the way, if bishop f6 is another try, knight takes f6, it seems black has defensive resources even here in this position. For example, rook takes, queen takes. There's always g6 and queen f8 if needed, and black does well from here. Black's getting an advantage there. So anyway, knight takes e6, a very violent move. It does justify, in a way, bishop c4. But yes, that's kind of making an excuse to yourself, saying, well, you've justified the bishop on c4. But it was your choice. If you were playing white, it was your choice to put the bishop on c4. You don't need to play the bishop to c4 to try and play this sacrifice. Fischer does accept the challenge. The diagonal is ripped open. And now rook takes f8, check. Now here, it seems that Fischer plays daredevil with bishop takes f8. There's the idea that white can play queen f4 essentially and queen f7 and mate on g8. It does take some time. Is this plan too slow? And also, could Fischer have played knight takes f8? On losing the bishop, knight c6, this position with knight d4, and bishop c5 if queen takes d4 is annoying. That pin is annoying. You can see bishop c5 will be pinning the queen, and if rook takes b4, this situation, you know, black's actually getting an advantage here. This is actually in black's favour, as an example. So knight takes was also plausible, but Fischer plays the more extreme version, bishop takes, and we see queen f4. So there's really this idea of really killing Fischer on the diagonal of death. As you might expect, the assassination job, queen f7 to g8. But guess what Fischer plays in this position, which you might not imagine is at all possible. It's a very, very calm move. The thing with Fischer, he does seem to appreciate the subtle resources and facilities that both sides' diagonal of death affords. And he plays the calm knight c6. This is so much stronger than anything else. Just an example of what's going on. For h6, the bishop going to d5, this is a big problem. Then queen f7, check. And, this is a big advantage to white. Just as a token gist of what's going on. If queen takes e5, queen takes, then the bishop is dropped, and that's equal. But with this move, the gauntlet is really thrown down. The invitation for queen f7 is really thrown down to the opponent. And Tringov uses this. And yes, he has a grandmaster from 2 years ago. He's been awarded as grandmaster. But Fischer has a tactical resource here. Black was also threatening, by the way, queen takes e5. If white does nothing, queen takes e5. There is a point to knight c6, putting more pressure on the centre. And also protecting the bishop in some variations. It does a lot. Hits the centre, protects the bishop. There's a general development move you want to do before active operations in general. But here, okay. After queen f7, what happens now? How is this actually parried, this crude threat? Well, the diagonal of death comes to the rescue for Fischer. Queen c5 check. It provides valuable support for this bishop. You might wonder, why does this bishop need to be doubly supported? So it doesn't have a dependency on the knight. Why is that important? Well, guess what Fischer plays in this position? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. How would you defend yourself here? Black to play. A crushing defensive move is played. Knight f6. Yeah. Knight f6. It defends just in time g8. It hits part of the battery. Bishop takes c8 is tried. If e takes, then, bishop takes, extinguishing the mate threat. And this is harmless. After knight d4, knight takes, this is just winning for black, trivially. Material up. If bishop takes f6, bishop takes again. And no problem, knight d4, knight takes b3, protects the queen as well again, if needed. So yeah, that's hopeless. If we look at this again, g takes is a bit riskier, but even that, black has an advantage. But, so yeah, this is the key move though. We have bishop takes c8, and now knight takes e5, just hits the queen, hits this guy. After queen e6, guess what Fischer plays here, which actually ends the game. Okay, 5 seconds, pause the video. Yeah, he actually plays this, threatening to checkmate the opponent. Doesn't waste time taking the bishop. And the opponent resigns, Tringov resigns. Black could have played rook takes c8. And this situation is an advantage to black as well, by the way. There's nothing fatal there. But knight eg4 is so much stronger. If h3, if the game had continued h3, then check. Bishop d6 check. Knight g4 check. Queen f2 check. And things are getting nasty, for example, like this. It's all getting a horrific king attack. It's going to be checkmate soon after that. Instead of h3, if bishop takes b7, knight f2 check, we have the classic smothered, actually not even a smothered mate, just a checkmate Or king f1, queen f2, checkmate. If g3, then queen takes g5 is good. And then, for example, this, it's totally hopeless, essentially, for white. But yeah, the key defensive task has been achieved already when Fischer played this knight f6, disarming this potentially lethal battery against g8 just in time, in the nick of time. But the queen c5, yeah, the casual knight c6, relying on queen c5 and knight f6, brilliant tactically resourceful defense. It shows why Fischer, he kind of relishes, he loves these Sicilian defense positions, sharp and tactical. That's why he's not being seen with the French defense quite often as much. Very rarely. In fact, has he ever played the French defense against anyone strong? No, probably not. So the Sicilian defense, very tactical positions, the slightest ounce of, tactic afforded from the diagonal check being used to defend this, which relieves the knight, which defends that just in time, g8. Spectacular defense resources shown in this game, and shows Fischer doesn't fear the Sicilian defense poisoned pawn variation. He will dare take the b2 pawn. Okay, some instructive points there, I think, for the defensive player. Hope you enjoyed it as much as me. I'll take you to the game end position, where the counter-attack begins, and white didn't wait for that counter-attack and resign here. Thanks very much.